All right, the man, the myth, the legend, Christchurch, New Zealand's Greig Hamilton. Great to have you today, Greg. How's everything been for you since returning from the Barkley there?
Yeah, pretty good. Just back to normal. So, yep.
And what does normal look like for you? I gather that you're not much of an online social media guy. Is that fair?
Yeah, that'd be fair. Yep.
Do you host any online presence at all?
No, not really. No.
You were not the easiest man to track down. Thankfully, an acquaintance through adventure racing circles had actually provided me your details, and I'm guessing she actually messaged you as well. Is that accurate?
Yeah, yep, yep. So got through.
Good stuff. Yeah, no, really pleased that you freed up the time to make this happen. How many interviews have you done since getting back?
You're the first.
The scoop. Look at that.
Yeah, yep.
I reached out and said I'd interviewed the other four finishers, and you were kind enough to say that we might as well get the full collection, right?
Yeah, yep.
I got the impression, so I got to chat with you after the race in the park there, but I got the impression that you are quite happy to kind of go back and go about your business and not get wrapped up in the hoopla. Safe to say that's who you are.
Yep, yep. It's pretty accurate. It's pretty sure it's happened.
Now, I had to do a little bit of research to kind of get an idea of your background and who you are, and I think it's safe to say that a lot of people would also not know really the background of you being from the Southern Hemisphere and all. You are a very accomplished athlete, though, and you would have to be to succeed at the Barkley Marathons. Um, you are the 2016 and 2017 world champion for orienteering for rogaining. Is that true?
For games, yep. Yep, that's
So for
accurate.
those that wouldn't know, because it's not a familiar, I think outside of the scene, rogaining is niche, certainly in some parts of the world, very popular in others. Talk us through what rogaining is specifically.
So rogaining is you've got a map with a collection of controls spread out across it, and you've got a set time limit, and the aim, each of the controls is worth a different number of points, and the aim is to get as many points as you can in the allowed time. So for the world champs, it's a 24-hour event, and the map will be maybe a couple hundred square kilometers, and yeah, the aim is just to try and accurately plan a course that will get you as many points as possible without being late back. Yeah.
And where were the two world championships that you were victorious in? Where were they held?
The first one in 2016 was in Australia, near Alice Springs, in the centre of Australia, and the second one was in Latvia, whatever in Europe.
I've actually been to Australia and New Zealand. I spent a calendar year there, 99 and 2000. I spent
nice.
four months backpacking in New Zealand. I
Yep.
wanted to be one of the first people in the world to see the sunrise on the new millennium. So I was in New Zealand at the end of 99, and I watched, it wasn't quite a sunrise. It was a little bit overcast that day. But
Yep.
I was on the South Island for sunrise for day one of the year 2000.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. The rogaining events, are they team events? Is that right?
Yeah, yep. Generally a team of two.
And what distance are you covering? So as you said, the map is going to be a couple of hundred square kilometers. So it's a
Yep.
24-hour time limit. I'm guessing there's no sleep involved. And then what kind of distance would you end up covering to end up becoming world champion?
So I mean, it varies a bit because it's the different locations have different type of terrain. So sometimes you've got quite hilly events. Other times you've got quite thick bush. But generally, somewhere between 120 and 130 kilometers would
Oh,
be
wow.
reasonably competitive. If it's flat, you're probably going to do more, and if it's hilly, it may be as low as 100 kilometers.
And what were the differences in the courses in Latvia versus Australia?
Australia was pretty hot.
Well,
Reasonably
especially Alice Springs. I mean, was it not upwards of 40 degrees there?
No, so it's the middle of winter, but it was still, from
Oh,
memory, high 20s, which felt very hot for us. Yeah, so quite open there, a bit rocky, sort of scrub when there was bush. and Latvia was much more forested, some tracks through there. Yeah, sort of, I guess, continental European, that sort of European terrain with the quite open forests.
So I noticed that your partner, I think in 2016, was Chris Thorne. Is that right?
Yep, that's right.
So my origin story is actually adventure racing and expedition and racing. And Chris is an absolute legend in that world, and I'm very familiar with Chris Thorne and his accomplishments. So talk a little bit about Chris actually, because he's obviously a very good friend of yours, and I believe
Yep.
he's also in Christchurch. Is that accurate?
He used to be here. He's now down in Queenstown. Um,
Okay,
but
that's where I watched the sunrise on the new millennium. But yeah, talk a little bit about Chris, and then maybe that crossover with the adventure racing side of things.
yeah, I mean, he's been a friend for a number of years, and we've done quite a few road games together now. It just seems to work quite well. We seem to be sort of similarly matched pace-wise, and we just sort of work really well together. So that in the road game, things just seem to flow quite nicely. You know, we take turns with the navigation. There's not too many discussions about that. We're sort of, I think, always pretty much on the same page there. So yeah, it just works really nicely. So just an enjoyable time out there with him, and he's just a really nice guy and very laid back and just enjoying things. So it's yeah, just a fun time out there.
And he's gone on to win some of the biggest expedition races in the world over his career.
Yep.
I'm curious, actually, for you with the Barkley Marathons, where would you rank this finish on your lifetime athletic achievements listing or board, if you will?
I don't know if you could really rank them. I mean, they're all sort of special in their own way. They're all
Well,
just sort
talk
of
me. How
a
about
bit
this?
different.
Talk me through your top five. What do you feel like? And I know I can tell talking about yourself is not your favorite thing, but you're going to have to for the next 30 minutes. But I'm going to ask. So, what are your top five that you feel in your lifetime of athletics, kind of endurance achievements?
Yeah, I mean, those two world champs were sort of pretty satisfying to manage to do that. And Barkley as well was satisfying to finally finish that one. I also enjoyed my first adventure race, which was the Patagonia expedition race a
Oh,
number of years ago.
that is legit. How was the ocean paddling in that one? I heard horror stories about how incredibly difficult the ocean stage was.
It was really enjoyable, actually. Some sort of reasonable swells there. You know, you sort of just about lose sight of your other kayak when you're out there. And we were supposed to paddle in the Beagle Channel, but unfortunately the winds were too strong, so that would have been quite the excitement, I think, paddling in there. But yeah, definitely enjoyable paddling.
I did.
And,
Oh yeah, keep going.
as for the fifth one, oh, it's pretty hard to choose. Yeah, any number of the road games I've done, you know, they've all been pretty enjoyable and, you know, and special in different ways, either with different teammates or just the terrain or just sort of how well we've executed the plan. So yeah, I don't have a special fifth one.
So was the Patagonia expedition race the one voyage into expedition racing?
Was it my first one you mean, or?
Yeah.
Yeah, so for the whole team, actually, it was our first adventure race. So it was a good jump into the unknown.
And you got it done.
Yep.
How long did it take you to get through that course?
I think it was about 7 days for the actual racing, and that put us way down on the Beagle Channel, and we had several days in a boat to get back to the start.
This one of the scariest experiences of my life was in an expedition race in Baja, Mexico, and they launched us onto the Pacific with a known storm front coming, and we were protected in the channel when we launched, and we got out into the open seas, and the swells were 20 plus feet, 20 to 25. It was teams of 3 co-ed. So we had a double and a single, and when the swells were, you would have to wait until it was equalizing to make sure that our teammate was 5 feet away from us, but we couldn't see them. We eventually lost our boat and had to swim to shore, and honestly barely got out alive. the Marines shut down the water course and actually went out and started collecting boats from people. It got so severe out there. So yeah, expedition racing is kind of a whole other beast with the skill sets that are needed and the true experiences that you get out of it, right?
Yeah, yeah. But
Any kind of crazy, scary stories from any of your expedition races?
not too much. I mean, that was enjoyable. That one in particular, like I think it was in February, but we got snow down to sea level near the end of the course. And we had a nice, I think it was about 140-kilometer trek near the end of it. And it was basically just through wilderness the whole time. So that was just, it felt quite special to be such, so remote from anywhere else. So it was just nice. It would be hard to do that without being in a race. I think, it'd be quite a lot of logistics to organize that yourself.
Yeah, that was certainly the attraction that me and my circle of people in expedition racing had, was just the landscapes that it got to pull you into safely, the
Yep.
experiences that you got to extract that you could never kind of do on your own, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I think that Patagonia race as well. It seems like their health and safety is perhaps a little bit lower than New Zealand, so you get a bit more of an adventurous race there as well, which I enjoyed. It was a bit more of an expedition rather than sort of too much safety stuff.
Yeah, adventure racing with a capital A in the southern in South America.
Yeah, yeah,
I have heard, yes, I have heard many stories from races, Patagonia and areas. Yeah, the permit process is a lot more lax than what we have to go through in New Zealand or Canada. I'm a race director here, and permits get harder and harder every year. And there's a reason that these big races often go to locations like that.
yeah. But I mean, it's really enjoyable because you've gone for the adventure side of it, and you really want to be able to make those decisions. What you feel safe doing or don't feel safe doing, rather than it just being a straight race. There's actual proper decisions to make, which is good.
Yeah, absolutely. And you really have to work as a team during those races too, right?
Yeah,
Your other world championship, was that a co-ed championship? Is that right?
it was. Yeah.
And who, speak to your partner from that one?
So it was a friend, Georgia Whitler. She's a very accomplished orienteer and rogainer. And we've done a number of races together as well. So it's really nice as well. Doing a mixed team like that, the dynamics are slightly different, but challenges are just the same.
So on the two world championship teams that you've been on, have they been where has your skill set balanced out? It sounds like you've had the best of the best as your teammate. I guess being
Yep.
world champion, you would have to though, right?
Yeah, I mean they've both been world champions with other people as well, so they're both very accomplished. So yeah, it's just been nice to race with them.
And is that a part of your life that you're going to continue competing in? Is that something where you're going to continue lining up for world championship rogaining events?
Possibly in the future. I don't think the next one's till 2025, so I don't know what will be happening by then. But yeah, I definitely still enjoy the rogaines. And because it's a different course every time, it's not like running the same race over and over. It's always new and challenging. So yeah.
So I can kind of I can draw the lines here as to how you learned about the Barkley Marathons, but talk me through it. Do you recall the first time you ever heard about this race?
I think it was back in the early 2000s, actually. And it wasn't that long after I got into running, and I came across Matt Mahoney's website with the results, and just reading through the race reports there, it looked quite appealing way back then. And then I didn't really do anything about it for probably more than a decade. And then I sort of, probably 6 years ago, sort of looked into it a bit more again.
Yeah, similar time frame myself. Yeah, I started with the expedition stuff 2004, and then learned of Barkley shortly thereafter, and similarly was about a decade before actually deciding it was time to move forward on that. There was another Kiwi that had been to Barkley. I think the name is Matt Bixley. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
And then was Matt a part of your journey then, of kind of bringing you into that fold for the Barkley?
I mean, it was good to talk to him after he'd done it, to find out his experiences about it. So that was really useful to get some first-hand feedback on what it was like. And I mean, it sort of matched up with what I expected, which was promising as well.
So your first time at the Barkley was 2019, and I've looked, it's accurate.
Okay, yeah. Trying to think back that far.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. We actually would have met that year and would have spent time on the trails together that year if not for the injury I sustained. So I was at the Barkley 16, 17, 18. In
Yeah.
2019, I unfortunately had a stress fracture in the neck of my femur. I spent the entire winter training on my bike in the hopes that I could kind of come off the bike and straight into the race. Doctors eventually told me that was not going to happen. So 2019, Barkley, your first go there. You got a fun run. But so yeah, how did it match up with your expectations on the ground when you showed up and you got to set your first footsteps into Frozen Head State Park?
I mean, it matched up, I guess, pretty closely with what I expected. And yeah, things went reasonably well. So, from a lot of respects, it was a good first attempt here. There's some things I took back that I could work on. But from the terrain point of view and the navigation and everything else, it seemed as I expected. I mean, I really enjoyed meeting people before the race and just sort of hanging out for a few days before. So I mean, didn't really know what to expect with that, but that worked out really well. That was a big draw card for the Barkley.
The camp experience is really special, isn't it? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I've always arrived, 2 or 3 days beforehand and just spent some time there, and it's been really, really enjoyable. I mean, it's very laid back. Everyone's pretty friendly, and I mean, the one bit of the camp experience that I've never had really is during race time, because I've always sort of been on the course, and you sort of come back and everyone's either finished and left, or about to pack up and go. So there's been no hanging around the campfire during the race. That'd be nice to experience at some point.
That was exactly my mentality of going back this year. As I had said, my farewell to Frozen Head would only end for me by being on the other side,
Yep.
hearing the conch blown and not freaking out, and eating frozen chicken for the first time, which I did because I was always a little too sketched out to eat frozen chicken when I was going to race.
Yeah.
It was actually quite good. I was impressed. But the funny thing with the frozen chicken, it's kind of infamous at the Barkley. It was literally a complete block of ice with chicken in the middle, and they dropped it on the fire and had to kind of slow cook it for like 8 hours to get it to thaw and cook properly. But a testament, Rich Limacher did an amazing job on that, and I can say thumbs up to the camp experience and the frozen chicken experience. So if you do decide to go back and experience things on the other side, it certainly is a lot more laid back. Obviously, the only way in is to crew for somebody, and that is a little bit stressful there. Who did you have the 3 years as your crew people for the 3 editions?
So the first year I had no one. Mike Doby's helped me when I was there. And then the second 2 I've had Sarah Smith, who's been amazing. Yeah.
And so 2019, so first time there, get yourself a fun run. You're flying back to New Zealand. What's kind of your takeaway? Where's your mindset at in terms of what the experience was? And clearly you were motivated to come back, but what was that kind of post-race experience like as you were processing what you had gone through?
Yeah, I mean, I found it enjoyable. So it's fairly similar to a lot of races in that respect. And then, it's similar to the Rogaines as well. You can sort of analyze it. You can find all sorts of things you can improve on. So I mean, you just go, well, if I do that a little bit different and this bit different and that, and you go, well, all those things add up to, an improved loop time. And you go, well, with that improved loop times. So yeah, it was just some post race analysis as to what things you can improve on. Yeah. And I mean, if I go on to the race and well, that's the absolute best I can do, can't do any better, then maybe it was different. But when you can find some things to improve on, it's always nice to go back and try and improve on them.
Do you think that's a necessary mentality to succeed at events like Barkley, to be able to dissect and try to find the things that you did wrong or you could improve upon, to take away what a lot of people might consider a negative and try to spin it into a positive?
I guess so. I mean, I've always had that that mentality. It's always analyzing, trying to work out what you could do better. Even if you've had a really good race, you can usually find things that you can improve on. I
Especially
think
in orienteering, right?
it's a perfect place. You can never have a perfect run. So, and I think if you don't have the ability to analyze your race like that, it's probably a lot harder to work out what you need to improve on, or probably even just to get there and have a reasonable race to start with. You've got to be able to work out what the course requires, and how you match up to that and what you need to work on.
When I was going through my own Barkley mission, I stepped into the orienteering world and really tried to work on my navigation. Never had aspirations of becoming a world champion, but to your point, at the end of every single orienteering event I'd ever done, I could barely sleep at night because my mind just kept going through all of the little bits and pieces of the race that I could improve upon, and all of the takeaways that I needed to be faster. And I got that feedback from very experienced people in the event that it's consistent. It's you never find that perfect race, but you're constantly striving for it. And I think that's one of the great addictions with orienteering, maybe.
Yeah, and it's great because when you first start out, you make massive mistakes, and once you get more and more experience, maybe it's only a few seconds you've lost, but those few seconds are just as annoying as a 10-minute mistake or a half-an-hour mistake you made when you first started. So it's good.
So I think one of the biggest insights I'd like you to provide for people, given you're a world champion orienteer and a Barkley finisher, is what is the navigation at the Barkley like compared to orienteering? Right? Like people think of the Barkley as an orienteering event, and it is not. So talk a little bit about the navigation at Barkley and how orienteering set you up for success, but the differences of the race itself.
But I think if you looked at you got orienteering and road gains as well. So I mean, if you looked at a really top level orienteering event, the navigation will be very, very technical. It's and very precise. The maps are incredibly accurate, and you'll be looking for a particular boulder or a certain edge of a vegetation clearing, or vegetation boundary, something very, very precise. And the top orienteers are incredibly fast and incredibly accurate at that. And rogaining is on a larger scale map, so it's not quite as accurate, and it's a little bit closer to what you get to Barkley. You've got to infer some things from the map. There's often bits missing, or things that aren't quite correct anymore, and that matches up quite nicely with Barkley. I mean, the forest or the park map that you get there, it doesn't have all the tracks on it. The tracks are not quite accurate in places. The vegetation sort of does or doesn't match up. There's lots of things that you need to be able to deal with. And technically, the Barkley, I mean, you need to be able to navigate, but it's not super technical. I mean, it's often you go to the top of a hill, you go to a stream junction, or maybe you go to a track and then you've got to go off the track so many meters and find it. So I mean, it's not super difficult like that, but then the Barkley's got you're awake for 60 hours often. You've got night. If you get rain, suddenly it's got so cold that you can't stop and look at the map for ages without freezing. So being able to navigate while moving is suddenly a huge benefit. If you get the infamous fog where you can't see more than a meter or two, suddenly there's a whole new skill set of navigation tools that you need to be able to successfully navigate with that. And then I think the biggest thing that people are often missing at the Barkley is they can navigate in good weather, but they don't know when they make a mistake, that it takes them a while to realize they've made a mistake, and then it can take them a long time to recover from that mistake. Whereas I think someone who's really good at navigating, they'll realize they've made a mistake and just be able to very quickly work out where they are and how to fix it, and that prevents the mistake becoming a race-ending mistake.
Which is the biggest thing with the Barkley Marathons. And John Kelly and I have talked about that. And it's so easy to take the wrong spur, the wrong descent, and you're off by 2 degrees to start and you're off by 20 degrees at the bottom. And before you know it, a small mistake has become a really big, critical race-ending mistake. So are you saying through your 3 editions, so you went fun run, finish,
Yep.
you managed to mostly avoid that real critical race-ending mistake?
Um, let's see, the first time my sort of race ending mistake was I couldn't find a book in the middle of the day that I'd been to twice before, due to just not remembering well enough where it was. I'd sort of, it was the one at Radar Creek, is it? Anyway, it was I'd remembered it being, you know, further away from somewhere than it was supposed to be, and so I was searching 50 meters away. And by the time I decided to what, clearly I'm remembering wrong, and went to the right place, so, you know, I'd wasted too much time. And then the second time, that was mainly due to some nutrition mistakes there, so it wasn't navigation. And then this time, I still made plenty of mistakes. It'd be nice to have a race where you didn't make mistakes, but I think all of them were small enough, and I picked up on them quick enough that they weren't catastrophic.
Let's go to your second version of the Barkley. So you ran in 19, you didn't return in 20. That was the
Yep.
pandemic year. Were you anticipating returning in 20? Were you training for it?
Remember. No, I don't think I was. We had I had a child after 2019, so I think it was just it wasn't going to work to try and do 2020.
2020, for me, I did the entire training block, including my last 12-hour overnight, and then got home and the world shut down like that day. And it was like, yeah, I put in every ounce of training and then didn't have a chance to go. So you did go back then in 2022.
Yeah,
That's a bit of a gap from 19 to 22, though. You got another fun run. You were a couple hours faster. The
yeah.
course would have changed. So you went back a second time, you flew home, you had accomplished the same thing, a fun run, even though it was a bit quicker. What were you able to take away from the second experience that convinced you that you were gonna become a finisher of this race?
I mean, it was similar to the first one, really. You know, I could still identify a few things that I could improve on, and if, when I looked back, I thought, you know, sort of 2.5 laps in, it was looking, I felt it was sort of a reasonable chance at that point. And it was just some silly mistakes from there, really, that cost me significant time. And, you know, by the time I got on the fourth loop, it was pretty much over by the time I got to the start of the fourth loop. So yeah, I thought, you know, it was still a good chance of getting a finish in, but it's always hard to know, really. It
Give
wasn't
me
written
2
off.
seconds. I have a cat that will not stop whining behind me to get out of the room, and I don't know if you can hear it, but I cannot not hear it. 1 sec. All right, sorry about that. Um, so 2022, did you have any intention of going in 2023?
But no, because we were in lockdown. I could get out of New Zealand, but there was no way I could get back in.
In 2023? Oh, because you were there in 2022, right?
So 2022. Sorry, I was thinking 2021. 2023. What was? No, I think it was just it was the rest of life getting, just taking up too much time. Because yeah, just the significant commitment of several months worth of training and being away for
And being a newish dad, etc.
Yep.
So you got to go back this year, your third, so 19, 22, 24, fun run finish.
Yep.
I think one of the fun stories that I kind of got from you when I talked to you briefly after the race was, you know, lap one. So the map comes out and everybody can see there's multiple changes to the course this year. Jared later said that was the single biggest change that he's ever seen to the Barkley Marathons. And camp kind of went quiet because everybody was really working on trying to source as much information as possible. It was obvious to those not racing that staying together on the first lap was going to be beneficial to allow people to find the new sections. But you
Yep.
mentioned specifically, and I don't know which book this was, but I think it may have been the new book or one of them, that there was a large group of people there and you had kind of stepped into the space. You saw people going everywhere and you kind of took a deep breath, had a bite to eat, looked around, and being the masterful navigator that you are, you saw the quiet space in that group and you were able to almost go directly to the book that people were struggling to find.
Yeah. I think it was book 5. And I sort of we arrived there. I can't remember who I was with, but we arrived there pretty early on. Had a brief look, looked at the obvious places, hadn't seen it. And then, yeah, more people appeared and a sort of mad searching by most people. And I just thought, well, I might as well just have a little bite to eat now and, have a watch, see who finds it. And then no one found it. And I was like, oh, that still looks like the most promising place back over there that people have been searching. And it had a really good search and it sort of was there hidden away.
And I think it was buried, wasn't it? People had gone there, but just kind of not dug deep enough to find it.
It was inside a tree, but you had to stick your head in to see where it was. If you looked in or shoved your hand in, you couldn't really feel it. You had to get just the right place.
Some of the unique elements of the Barkley Marathons, just how hidden the books can actually be out there, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So through the one of the other interesting things that I got from you in our brief conversation afterwards, I asked you how the jet lag was treating you coming all the way from the Southern Hemisphere to the race. Your answer, actually, I really got a kick out of. So talk me through how you handled the jet lag during the race.
Yeah, so I think it was about 6 hours time difference. So 6 o'clock in Frozen Head, it was about midday at home. So yeah, I just basically ignored the time the jet lag, and between midnight and 6 a.m. in Frozen Head, it was like from 6 p.m. to midnight at home. So I felt pretty much wide awake, which is quite nice.
So would you say the best training philosophy for success at the Barkley is to do all your training in Australasia?
Yes, yeah, it's the key.
The key to success. Do you know of any other people in New Zealand that are also aspiring to become Barkley finishers?
No, I don't know.
Don't, or are you not allowed to say?
Don't know. Matt Bixley, there you go.
There you go. Yeah, for sure, Matt. So this year, incredibly unique. I when you finished, the very first thought I had was I felt like Jasmine was going to do it, and she obviously, in fact, did. And we had Ihor, who's a friend of mine, lives down the street, first and won. And John was his third. Jared with his fourth. Jasmine, first ever female finisher. And then you just kind of snuck in there, grabbed a finish, and then went about being your quiet self. And I kind of thought, I hope that Greg's finish isn't lost in the hoopla of everything else that's going on. And it was one of the main reasons I wanted to connect with you, was to allow people a little bit of insight into who you are and how hard you work for this and how talented you actually are. But it's clear that you aren't fussed one way or the other about that recognition. So with the Barkley this year, it was incredibly unique. There were so many of you. How was lap 4 and 5 for you specifically? And were you in any kind of conversation with the direction of travel for the 5th lap?
So I mean, Luke 4 was quite good. I mean, I was with Jared and I were together for a while, and then we met up with Jasmine. So I was with her as well as Jared for quite a while, and then we sort of separated a little bit coming into camp. And yeah, Luke 5, there wasn't too much. I didn't talk to Jared or Jasmine about which direction they were thinking of going. I mean, at that point, it seemed a little bit moot. I mean, John and Ihor were ahead of us, and we caught up to Damien. So I figured that the loop direction was already chosen by whoever went first, and it was just a matter of where you went out on, what order you went out in. So there was potentially a little bit of chance of choosing a direction there if you timed it right, but it looked like Damien and John sorted out what order they were going to go in, and then yeah, I was left with counterclockwise, and it looks like Jared and Jasmine had a discussion and sorted out which ways they're going to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But on Loop 4, I've been thinking about it a while, and prior to this year, I thought that going clockwise was the easier direction, but I was struggling on Loop 4 to work out whether clockwise was better or worse. They sort of
Really?
both had pros and cons. Yeah, so I wasn't, it wasn't the end of the world going counterclockwise for me. yeah,
I was definitely a clockwise preferred guy for my 3 experiences there. But you, so maybe it's this. Like my experience is that clockwise, there's greater handles to find the books, and there's lower probability of someone with my skill set of making a critical mistake.
yeah,
Counterclockwise, a lot easier for someone with my skill set to blow a book entirely and have a critical race-ending mistake. But maybe
yeah.
with your skill set, that's not quite the same perception.
Yeah, there's the new climb that was added. It wasn't particularly appealing, like the clockwise loop to have to do that. It almost makes meat grinder look nice.
I heard the horror stories.
Yeah, and I think counterclockwise probably is a little bit more technical navigation wise. And I made a few small mistakes there, but nothing that was really crucial. So yeah, it wasn't too bad.
Jared finished, and the last we heard was that he was going down Jury Ridge. He questioned if that was accurate. And you had departed just before him, but when he got to the book, your page was still in there. And there was kind of a hush as to like, oh, does that mean Greg has made a mistake and might not finish? Do you recall what kind of happened in that stretch?
So I'd made a mistake earlier. Just after the water stopped, I was ahead of John, and then I was going down Hill Apocalypse. And I don't know, on loop 4, I'd had no problem going down there. And on loop 5, I think I just must have veered slightly off the ridge. And it took me a few minutes to realize what I'd done. And by the time I got back on, I think John had passed me, and then Jared was just in front, and we got the book at the bottom of the hill together. And then I had a swim to cool off before going up the hill. Started up the hill and had a swim. And that was where Jared went past me. I think we were together he was just in front for a little bit, but then I slowed up. I'd forgotten to fill up my water bottles. So that was the last I saw of Jared partway up there. And I don't know how close he was after that, whether he could actually see me further on, but I didn't see him again.
I had a swim at the Barkley once too, but it wasn't to cool off. We have under 2 minutes before this is going to cut out. My last question is, what are some? I would like some thoughts on Jasmine Paris and her accomplishment this year, and what it was like to share the course with her and quality time out there. Or not, I don't know about quality time, but to share time out there with her.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed the time. We didn't actually speak much at all on that loop. We're sort of probably just focused on our own little worlds of getting through the course, making sure we're looking after ourselves. But I did notice out there just how well she moved through the terrain. She was very, very fluid in the rough stuff in particular. She just sort of glided through that. And I was, just really impressed at how smoothly she moved. And she seemed to be able to navigate well as well. Like she just seemed to know what she was doing. And seemed very, very sort of calm. So, she seemed to have like all the qualities that you would need to do well at the Barkley. And I thought it was fantastic that she managed to finish. Saw her on loop 5, saw her maybe close to halfway around, and she was looking good then. And then when I got back to camp and she hadn't finished, I was a little bit unsure how much she had to go. And then it sort of got down to 5 minutes, and you're sort of thinking, oh, maybe she's not going to finish, which would have been really disappointing. So it was really nice to see her finish there. And then just watching her come in, seeing her push so hard there, but knowing that she's known for the last hour or several hours how close it is and how hard she's had to push just to get to that last bit. Was really good.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.